Hello and welcome to another Checkpoint video. We're looking at Headliner NoviNews. It's an independent game looking at the way in which news proliferates in the environment. It's a really interesting game. It's a game that Nick Cowan, one of our contributing editors, kind of brought to my attention. He wanted to review it, and I thought I hadn't heard of it. But this game is all about a fake country in which you take control. You effectively become Laura Koonsberg. So if you've been following the podcast and you've been listening to Ultimate Koonsberg 4, then this is basically what Ultimate Koonsberg 4 should have been. You are the most powerful news editor in Novistan, which is why the name Novi comes from. And your job is, as the editor, is every day to choose a number of stories that you want to put out on air and the angle that you want to give those stories, which we'll see a little bit a little bit later on. It's a really interesting concept, actually, because the world of fake news now in which we live in, it really is kind of having an impact on the way that we kind of gather information. And actually, one of the reasons that I think this started was because there is an argument that obviously social media has made news telling more difficult, and obviously we've got people that trying to kind of break news stories in order to get the clicks so they can be first to do it, so they get all the traffic. So there's a lot of difficulty at the moment around news and news delivery. And news verification, which is very, very important. These are all real problems, and these are all real problems that we start seeing in real life. So, for example, we've had the Cambridge Analytica situation in which people have been targeted in order for voting, both in the US and in the UK. We've got echo chambers that are constant and persistent problem within our social media groups. So much so that obviously Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook is currently in the Senate, answering questions about how Facebook is responsible, as is Twitter, for putting out that news. And there is this argument of freedom of speech, but at what point does freedom of speech become incitement of hatred? So there are a lot of real issues hanging around here, and we've seen a lot of independent news agencies also kind of making their way out of this mess and garnering huge numbers of support, which is really never very good in something like this, because a lot of the times people don't necessarily need to have the truth, they just need to be told what to believe. And this is the situation that we find ourselves in now. As a news reporter in Novistan, you have to now choose a selection of stories and then set the news agenda for the rest of the country. Your news agenda will then impact the way in which the general population responds. Now, I am going to leave you just to watch the video for a little while. I think it's important that you guys have a look at it and watch through it. I'm going to fast forward bits and pieces of it. We start off just by coming in and being offered this kind of platform of view in which we have to make our way through this, and just it's important to pick up on the elements and the stories that are being commented on by the population, and remember, the population is your tool. You can use the population to set policy. The media is a very powerful tool indeed. So it's going to be an interesting look at how this game works, and what's really interesting with the game is you can play through it multiple times, and every time, if you change the way in which you report news stories, then that's going to affect the way in which the story progresses. Everything from GM to corruption, genetically modified foods, to corruption, to fake news. All of this stuff are discussed. All of these are discussed in this game. And just as reference, actually, my name is Tabletop Trunk in this game. So if you see kind of titles of Tabletop, that's why. And here we are. We're starting our job now as the news editor of NoviNews, Headliner. We're going to be setting the news agenda, and this is our first day on the job. You'll also hear snippets of the interview with the creator of the game and with Nick Cowan as well. I'll drop them in as we progress through the video as well. I think it's important that you understand why this game was made and what the purpose was behind it. There are more games like this coming out, hopefully, one specifically about social media as well, which I think is going to be quite interesting. But do make sure that you watch this through, and if there's any questions, do get in touch. We'd love to kind of have a discussion, a wider discussion on this in one of our podcasts or with you guys, with our community. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts. Anyway, we're off to curate the news, and let us know what you think. You know, liberal or conservative. So let's see where we go. Okay, so now that's a really key line there. Be the first to break the news. And I think this is the problem that a lot of media organizations have kind of fallen down the trap of. It's that thing to be the first to break the news, be the first to break the news. Forget accuracy, forget verification, just be the first to break the news. Now this is dangerous. So I'm going to play this game, talk you through this. I'm going to play this game as if I was playing it as an actual journalist. All right, so I'm going to see if there are any verifications for stories. I'm going to check my facts, and I'm going to publish news that isn't sensationalist. So let's see what that does to the environment. Oh, so the 50N at the top is on Novi Bucks. So that's all good. Now, I suppose I could ask... So what you're going to hear now is Jacob Kitstalsk from Unbound Creations speaking to Nick Cowan about the inspiration behind the game and how it started. So Nick asks him, what was it that kind of was the kernel of the inspiration?
So the game actually began with another game called Just Headliner. There's sort of two in this series, with the NoviNews kind of being the big one. And originally it started as a kind of a more small action kind of a thing when you're kind of getting articles on your desk, you're trying to approve them before the clock runs out. It was meant to be a bit more gameplay, but I always gravitated more towards storytelling, and I wanted to be a bit more meaningful. And it was also around the time when I was prototyping that. It was one of 4 small prototypes I was doing, and that was around the time where the elections were happening in the US. The whole
was this in 2016?
Yes.
Okay.
It was around that time, and the fake news started becoming a thing. It started trending. It started becoming a bigger and bigger topic, and I realized that this game is becoming more relevant. So I kind of pivoted from something that was kind of smaller, just like a little more action-based to more story-focused and a bit more meaningful. And releasing the first Headliner, I saw that it had I think it had a lot of potential for something bigger, something longer, because the original game was much shorter, much smaller, and basically kind of using the success of the first game, we built on that with use.
So, so with press towards the end. So, high numbers of domestic troops concerning some police chiefs. So this will be kind of a nod, I think, to Hong Kong. So I think we should approve this one. That's an interesting story. Next one. What is better buzz? Something else on benches. Let's have a look and see what this one is.
Going back a little bit to the original question, and what you're saying is like, yeah, that's that was kind of the point, that people detach themselves and from the real world scenario and just kind of play how they felt as a hunch. And also, like you said, the game is meant to be played multiple times to kind of get both the sense of the world, and kind of as you play multiple times, you get a more context of the situation, and you can also, I feel like you get the fuller message, like you said yourself, from playing it multiple times and seeing that all those different ways lead to different outcomes that are not necessarily always better or worse. It's not necessarily like we're trying to make a critical judgment. We're trying to make you aware just how much can be influenced just by, which articles and headlines are run, which stories are being reinforced, which stories are being suppressed, and just the power that media has on the people in those variety of different ways.
Very good point. Maybe we modify our dreams that everybody's still pregnant about humanity. Okay. Let's see what happens if we go this way. Let's go the other way actually, because it's the way we came. I don't quite understand the kind of element here where we are kind of running through city, obviously, the city where people are living on the street. So immediately then we can see here we already have So immediately, this is the story. We've already seen two people now. So my brother Justin and the other guys are talking about this kind of medicine. So obviously the things that we've not approved are the things that we've spoken about. The streams. Let's see what he wants. He's my brother. Let's get him some. Get him some medicine. So let's go get some medicine. Justin. So as you can see, we're already starting to get an idea of what the general population is feeling. This is a local shop owner who's got major concerns about big conglomerate coming in. We met our brother earlier who has his own issues as well and is obviously being influenced by what's going on in the news. This will all kind of progress as we go through the game as well. But it's interesting how your relationships and the people that you meet also have an influence on the stories that you choose to push. It's a very difficult, very, very difficult job being impartial when you are emotionally attached. Here's our boss. He's not very happy. So it did make a difference. Brilliant. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. So this was in reference to me filling out my form at the beginning of this game. You fill out your form and your ID to come into the job, and it says for official use only, don't write anything in here. And I just wrote idiot in there just to see if it made any difference, and it did. Nationalised healthcare, brilliant. About time. Okay. Let's be a bit brash with him. We're not approving this one. And we're not approving this one. But it's a suspect, actually. Let's see what happens here. Let's see what happens here now. So we've approved the story that I didn't want to approve. Let's see how that. There's Evie again. Green eyes last time, I think. She's got green eyes now. So just on Lizzie seems to be staple. Oh, because they're not like that. So let's get to bed, shall we? was there. So, afternoon time, here we go. Big issue today, Prime Minister Wolf is giving an official telecast tonight. No doubt he heard of our channel. Okay. So that's interesting. That buzz string thing. I was going to pan on the next one. Okay, let's do that. I'll prove that stuff because I think it's disgusting. Which one's coming through? It's the bracelet. Let's see how this has an impact now on. So you see, this is having an impact not just on us and the society, but the people that we love. So let's see what Justin, our brother, is now doing, and see how he takes the What's really difficult about this game is the fictional worlds and the fictional countries. First of all, you don't have a very clear idea of what the maps are, and probably more important than any of that, like where this country sits in relation to stuff, is the diplomatic, economic, and geographical priority, if you like, that each country has. So you don't know which country's good. You've got a couple of ideas. Lyris, we understand, is a modified country. It has a lot of technology. We're learning about Lyris from Evie. But there's not really any kind of idea as to where you stand as a society within this made-up Okay, so this is the... Oh, that's sad. We don't want to be insular. rolls of cash keep appearing on and around my bed. Right, let's see what happens Friday, last day of the working day. Oh, he's not happy, is he? Oh. Problems. It is actually everybody that's causing problems. We have a responsibility to make sure that everybody knows this. Let's go see where's Evie. Oh, Evie was going to move her for a drink. Evie. Let's see what Evie has to say. Yeah, video games. relationship with Evie quite nicely. Let's go see how Justin's doing. This guy can be quite interesting. So we're starting to meet different characters now. These things are quite important. Society's feeling. So let's see what Rudy's doing. What happened there? Oh my word, what's happened? Why did they do that? Very creepy how the sound. So, were we responsible for this, or what's the story? Let's see what the radio's telling. Get some sleep and see what happens on day 5 on Saturday.